this is Rebecca Beattie, and I'm completely ignoring Debbie's instruction that we have to be in pyjamas today to do our filming. So I promise you I will bring Jim Jams in later, but this morning I'm out in North London and it's a beautiful sunrise going on just behind me. I won't go too far because then it will blind you and then you won't be able to see anything. But it's gorgeous this morning. It's about 3 degrees and I'm out in Totteridge Fields Nature Reserve. So I thought we'd start our talk here, and then later on I'm gonna take you back to the tiny flat that I live in, and we're gonna do some recipes for some self-care baths. So this morning I'm out by one of my favourite oak trees that I like to come and visit when I'm walking each week, and it seems quite an apt place to start. And we're going to think about self-care. So what on earth do I know about self-care? The reason I'm quite passionate about this subject is that I come from a slightly unusual upbringing. I had a mum who was a social care worker for all of her life. She basically collected strays and worked with people who the rest of society had written off. So as a probation officer, she worked with boys who'd got themselves into trouble and needed to find a way out, or adults who had just gone down the wrong road and taken a bad decision that got them into a nasty place. And this extended to animals too. So we had about 9 cats at one point. Most of them were semi-feral. Some of them had gravitated to our house from the farm in the valley below, and they were all slightly bandy-legged, slightly scruffy looking, and slightly unloved and in need of TLC. As an adult, people used to say to me, "Are you going to follow in your mother's footsteps?" My sister did, but I was adamant I wasn't going to follow in her footsteps. I was adamant it was a life in the arts for me, and I was going to be an actor, and that's how I'd live my life. But then something changed along the way, and on my way back from an acting job about 17 years ago, I went to a temping agency because I desperately needed to earn some money, and asked for the first admin job that they had available. So the admin job they gave me was one that nobody else wanted to do. They had an admin job available at a drug counselling charity in West London, and it was a really small charity, but everybody else was too scared to take the assignment. And now for me, having been somebody that used to go and visit my mum at work in probation hostels and alcohol drop-ins and all over the shop, it didn't really bother me. So I took the assignment and I was determined that I would only work there for a month. So my job's changed quite a lot over the years. I've gone from being somebody who was an admin to somebody who worked in IT, to somebody who worked with property, and then finally, in the last few years, I've wound up as the person that looks after health, safety and well-being. Now, for most organisations, that might be about slips, trips and falls and Article 3.6 of the Health and Safety Act. Not in my organisation. I'm lucky enough to work for a charity who really cares about the well-being of their staff. So that's the kind of angle I'm coming from. So it's the well-being aspect, and that's applicable more or less in any life pattern that you want to pick up. So growing up with a mum like the mum that I grew up with, one of the things I noticed is that those that care for other people often care for themselves last on the list. And if you're not careful, one of the problems can be that you end up completely burnt out, worn out, you've used up all your batteries, and then you've got nothing left to give anybody else. So for me, it's quite apt that our theme this week is self-care. I've come from writing an article for Pagan Dawn a couple of weeks ago, which was on the topic of self-care as well. And at work a couple of weeks ago, I was teaching workshops on self-care for worn-out drug workers. So just so you can get a sense of where I am this morning, it's gorgeous. It's 3 degrees, it's really cold, and there's a really heavy frost. But this is Totteridge Fields Nature Reserve in North London. So for me, one of my primary ways of doing a bit of self-care is time in nature, making sure that I get walks out in this, because as a city witch who works in the inner city, and it's very urban there and very noisy and very crazy and busy and can be quite overwhelming at times. So now, in my private life, in my spiritual life, I also hang out with a lot of people who feel that they have a calling in life, either to the priestesshood or priesthood of modern paganism, or they might be people that aren't affiliated to a particular worldview, but they feel that they have a secondary calling in life, either to their art or to people or to whatever it is that they feel that they're called to do in life. It's their purpose. So it's perfectly normal in life that once in a while, as much as you might plan to keep things calm and collected and on an even keel, life explodes at you. You might have a complete crap explosion going on in your personal life. And what we're not so good at doing is making sure that we're okay first. We forget that the priests, the priestesses, the teachers, the parents, the care workers, the drug workers, the counsellors, all need to look after themselves first before they can look after anybody else. So it's not unusual to find that if you have a calling in life and you're one of life's carers, that once in a while you get completely drained. And as somebody who suffers from ME, I know how that feels. It's something that I've lived with for the last 15 years or so, or maybe longer. And I have to watch my energy levels, because while I'm busy running around writing books, writing novels, doing my full-time day job, being a student, and also taking care of people at work, once in a while my batteries go completely dead and I have to recharge them. So how do we recharge them? That's where self-care comes in. So these then are my 5 steps to self-care. Number 1 on the list is know your own map. So what do I mean by know your own map? Well, any of you that are familiar with the Western mystery tradition and have studied anything about ancient Greece will know that above the doorway to the Delphic oracle, the words inscribed were know thyself. Now this is one of our most significant, important details when acting as a priestess or a priest, or anybody in life who falls into that caring role. Know thyself. You have to know your own patterns. So I would hazard a guess that as a human being living the lives that we live in this world, it's completely impossible to live without stress of some kind. Right back to our most basic beginnings, we all have that flight or fight instinct that kicks in. So if you're being chased by a woolly mammoth, or you're dealing with your day-to-day stresses at work or at home, stress is something that we have to live with. It's something that we have to learn to get along with. Now, some forms of stress can be really helpful because it gives you the energy that you need in that fight or flight instinct to deal with things that you might not otherwise want to deal with. So some things are quite useful to have that reaction to. But after a while, if you've got that stress reaction going on all the time, eventually it knocks your body's ability to recognise the stressors out of sync. So you end up with anxiety, you might end up with depression, and eventually, if you're not careful, you end up burnt out. Now, this is something that's really crucial when you're dealing with social care working. It's a really hot topic at the moment, resilience to stress and how we deal with those things that come into our daily working life. So when I say know thyself in this context, what I'm talking about is knowing the signs of stress in you. Where do you feel it first? We all have a reaction that comes first. So there are kind of 3 main areas that you might get a reaction from. One is your body. It's possible that you'll see a physical reaction first. It's possible that you might get anxiety in your tummy, you might get diarrhea, you might get any kind of headaches, you might have physical reactions. So I get eczema as well, and that's where I spot it first. My skin flares up, my asthma flares up. It might be any kind of physical reaction that you're aware of first. Or maybe it's an emotional reaction that you notice first. Maybe you notice that you're down, you're feeling withdrawn, you're feeling like you don't want to interact with people, or you might be going the other way completely. You might be somebody that cries a lot at the drop of a hat, or you might find that you get angry really easily and the smallest thing will trigger you. Perhaps the first thing that you notice is a complete change in your behaviour. Maybe you suddenly withdraw from everybody, or you really don't want to be around people. Who knows? Everybody's different. We all have our own way of reacting first, but what's really important is that you start to learn to recognise the patterns in yourself. It's possible that you have a kind of mixture of all three of those things going on. Maybe you get stressed, you cry, and you withdraw, and you also get the physical reactions there as well. But what's really important in knowing your own map is starting to recognise what comes first. What's the real early sign that you can start to learn to train yourself to notice first? Is it that the feelings come first, or is it the thoughts that come first? And if you can start to learn to recognise the patterns, then maybe you can intervene earlier. So with self-care, that early intervention is crucial, because if you can get some really good self-care practices into your toolkit and you can learn to recognise the signs of stress a little earlier, then earlier intervention can stop you having a complete meltdown. So step 2 then. Step 2 is don't be afraid to stop and ask for directions. And this is one that I'm not so good at myself. So they always say you have to teach the thing you need to learn. This is one for me. So learning to stop and ask for directions, stopping to ask for help. Sometimes we're painfully independent, let's put it that way. So if, like me, you're as stubborn as an old mule and you're not so good at learning to ask for help, this one can be quite tricky. But we do need to start asking for help when we need it. There are times when you need to ask somebody to look after your kids for you, or you need to take time off work just to sit back and relax a bit. And that really leads us on to step 3. Remember to check your oil and keep your battery charged. So if you have a car, it has to run on fuel. So obviously you need to keep refueling it. And if you put nasty old cheap oil in the car, eventually the mechanics of it are going to start to wear out and get stuck together and not work properly. So keeping your battery charged and your fuel tanks topped up sometimes means that we need to do those good things for ourselves. You've got to recharge the batteries in order for yourself to be able to put some energy out into the community. So remembering to keep your battery charged and your tanks topped up, this is where those self-care things come in. So what constitutes self-care then? Each of us is going to have a completely different answer to this question, because we're all unique individuals that have our own preferred methods. And it's really up to you. But to give you some examples, it might be that you need to start doing some creative things. If you've forgotten in the rush of life that you love doing creative tasks, then take the time to do them now. So it might be colouring books that you get out. It might be watching favourite old episodes of Miss Marple on TV in your gym jams, or it might be a nice relaxing candlelit bath using some of the self-care bath salts that we're going to talk about separately later. Or it might be going out for walks in nature. It might be cooking for your family, it might be cooking for yourself, making cookies, making banana bread, all of these things could constitute self-care. Making sure that you set time aside to take breaks from work is another one. Go to work on time, leave work on time. Go to a museum, go to your favourite gallery, sit amongst the Egyptian antiquities or your favourite paintings. all of these things that kind of nourish your soul, that make you feel like you're doing something that's just for you and not for everybody else around you. Or if you're an exercise bunny, then make sure that you get time to go to that yoga class, to go to the gym, to go for a run. So step 4 is take regular rest breaks and remember to keep your tanks topped up. So we've done all those self-care things, but also remember to do the basic things. That means sleeping well, it means eating well, it means drinking lots of water and keeping yourself hydrated, because it's amazing how much just something as simple as drinking water can help with anxiety levels, stress levels, and automatically if you're not eating well or sleeping well, then you're not going to cope as well with life's stresses and dramas which inevitably come. And then step 5. For me, step 5 is almost more important than any of the others, and I have it down on my list as enjoy the scenery as you go. So there are times in life that you really want this. The frozen lake, quite early in the year this year. You want serenity, you want calm, you want the birds singing in the trees. But what you actually get is this. So what do I mean by enjoy the scenery around you? Well, there are times in life when you can plan all you like, you can have ideas about what you want for yourself, ambitions for yourself, and life plans, and all of those things where you think you're in control of the car, and then sometimes you find that's not the case at all. So learning to enjoy the scenery around you means finding some level of acceptance that there are times in life when you have no control over what's going on around you. So if any of you have been part of the recovery communities, then you'll know this little prayer which goes, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that's really what I mean when I say enjoy the scenery. It's learning to understand what you can change and what you can't. And sometimes in life, the only thing you can change is not what's going on around you and how everybody else is behaving, but it's how you react to something. So when I say enjoy the scenery, what I mean is learn to start to spot the beauty in the small things, whether it's keeping a small beauties journal every day on Facebook, or whether it's practicing mindfulness. That's another way of doing it. It's learning to spot the beauty around you and to know, despite all the chaos and all the craziness, there are little pockets of time in your life where you can just stop, pause for a moment, and recognise that there's more to this life than just what's going on around you. So that might mean taking yourself off for solitary walks like I do. It might be practicing mindfulness at home. It might be doing body scan meditations. Whatever it is that helps you to get through, really. There are times when you need to pull all the tools out of the toolkit and help yourself to just sort of get from one day to the next. So there we have it. That's our top 5 tips of self-care for worn-out pagans, drug workers, social care workers, parents, teachers, priests, priestesses, whoever you are out there, and you're doing the work, keep doing the work, but make sure you look after yourselves in the process. And join me later. I'm going to be taking you back to the tiny flat where my pyjamas are waiting, and a bit of bacon sandwich self-care, and then I'm going to be showing you some recipes for making sacred baths.